Welcome to my channel. If you're drawn to real horror, true events that make your heart race and your mind linger, you're in the right place. Tonight, I'm sharing 4 chilling true stories, accounts that blur the line between reality and nightmare. These are moments when the places we trust the most suddenly become unrecognizable and fear creeps in from the shadows. As you watch, remember, these are not tales from fiction. They actually happened, and the people involved will never forget them. Stay with me if you dare. It all began during my first year at university. I had just unpacked my belongings into my dorm room, the air still heavy with the scent of cardboard and detergent. My family had said their goodbyes, waving through the dorm hallway, and I was left alone with the quiet hum of anticipation for what the year might bring. Later that day, my new roommate arrived. From the very first moment, something fell off. He was socially awkward, yes, but there was more to it than that. Something about him made the room feel colder. I introduced myself, extending my hand for a friendly handshake. He hesitated, staring at my hand as though unsure what it was, then let out a soft laugh and gave me the most lifeless, limp handshake I had ever felt. When I asked his name, he simply said, "Dale," without a flicker of enthusiasm. Any attempt at casual conversation quickly died. His answers were monosyllabic, punctuated by awkward, hollow chuckles. Within minutes, we were both hunched over our laptops, silent, worlds apart in the same room. I considered asking the administration for a new roommate. Anyone would be better than this unnerving presence. But at the time, I didn't yet understand just how dangerous Dale could be. The first night, after wandering the campus and meeting some of the other students, I returned to the dorm only to find Dale sitting in the same spot as before, staring blankly ahead. "Hey Dale," I called, but he didn't respond. Shrugging, I turned off my lamp and tried to sleep. But Dale stayed awake until the early hours, fingers clattering over the keyboard until 3 a.m. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. Not long after, I woke to a soft glow from the moon. The blinds had been opened, and there, sitting on the edge of his bed, was Dale. His gaze fixed on me. My heart leapt into my throat. "What are you doing?" I whispered. He murmured a single, chilling word, "Sorry," before laying back down. The next morning, I discovered Dale had already left the room. I assumed he was finally out exploring campus, but that was far from the truth. That Saturday, during orientation, I passed the school gardens and overheard a couple of students whispering. Curious, I glanced over and froze. Dale was crouched behind a cluster of bushes, hands pressing against the rough bark of a tree, rubbing it with a strange intensity. Unsure whether to intervene or ignore him, I simply continued walking. I explained to the students who he was, earning their awkward apologies. Despite the odd encounter, I managed to make friends with them, a small reprieve from the unsettling presence of my roommate. By that evening, I learned the university had reassigned me a new roommate, a quiet, harmless relief. Returning to my room that night, I found Dale facing the door from his desk chair. He greeted me with a single, detached word, "Nothing." I sat on my bed and opened my laptop, only to realize it had been left unlocked. Emails I hadn't even opened were wide open, folders sifted through. I knew immediately. Dale had gone through my personal files while I was gone. When confronted, he denied it instantly, his voice too loud, too rehearsed. I felt sick to my stomach, but stayed silent. I couldn't risk a confrontation, not in my own room. As I searched for pajamas that night, I noticed my clothes had been rifled through as well. Later, in the dead of night, I woke to the distinct sound of a zipper. Sitting up, my worst fears were confirmed. Dale was going through my bag. I flicked on the lamp and caught him, his eyes wide with feigned innocence. "I think you have my toothbrush by mistake," he muttered, the closest thing to a plausible explanation he could muster. The following day, I met my new roommate and felt a fragile sense of safety. But that night, for the 3rd consecutive night, strange noises returned. A soft clicking, irregular yet persistent, echoed through the hallway outside my door. At first, I imagined it was something mundane, perhaps a loose floorboard or a small animal. But as I peered through the peephole, the truth was horrifying. Someone was there, hands on the doorknob, attempting to enter. Trembling, I called campus police. Within minutes, officers arrived, cuffing Dale right outside my door. He had followed me, trying to break into my new room. I never saw him again. Whether expelled or suspended, I never knew. Even years later, the memory of Dale lingers, a nightmare shadow over what should have been one of the most exciting times of my life. Every time I recall that first week, the fear rises again, a chilling reminder that some people exist just a little too close to the edge of normal, and the consequences of that can follow you forever. During my 2 years at Binghamton University, I quickly became part of a tight-knit group of friends. We spent nearly every weekend together, exploring the campus, attending parties, and just enjoying our time away from home. One chilly October Friday, when the group didn't have any particular plans, I decided to hang out with 2 of my closest friends. We made our way to a small, secluded area of a university's nature preserve by the lake, a spot few people ever found. The clearing was perfect for a small fire. Far enough from campus security and hidden from curious eyes, it had earned a reputation as a secretive hangout. Occasionally, other students would come to drink, smoke, or partake in other mischief, but it was never crowded. That night, we brought some beers, struck a fire, and settled in for what we jokingly called a bro chat. The flames crackled and danced, casting flickering shadows across the trees. Time seemed to slip by faster as the alcohol loosened our laughter, and soon one of my friends was rolling in the leaves, completely overtaken by our antics. But then the laughter stopped abruptly. My other friend raised a finger to his lips and whispered, "Shoo." The sudden silence was pierced only by the faint crunch of leaves and twigs somewhere in the distance. We exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever or whoever was out there had heard the fire, and now it seemed to be moving, circling around our campsite, or at least tracing some odd path through the underbrush. Panic mingled with adrenaline. None of us were the confrontational type. No one wanted to be the one to call out and risk a face-to-face encounter. So we stayed quiet, barely breathing, straining our ears to pick up every sound. The snap of a branch, the rustle of leaves, the faint echo of footsteps that seemed to follow us wherever we looked. The scene felt eerily like a real-life horror movie, like we were trapped in a Blair Witch nightmare, with the woods themselves closing in around us. Suddenly, a heavy thud made all 3 of us jump. At first, I couldn't process what had happened. Then I realized a branch had been hurled directly into the center of our fire pit. One of my friends bolted instantly, sprinting into the woods, while the other 2 of us froze, half laughing, half paralyzed by fear, unsure if this was a prank or something more sinister. Then came a scream. My friend, who had stayed with me, was struck in the face by another flying branch, his shout cutting through the night. I grabbed our backpack, yanked him to his feet, and we ran as fast as we could toward the dorm. Our hearts pounded, our legs burned, and yet we could hear footsteps behind us, closing in with every step. Finally, we reached the road that separated the preserve from campus. Gasping for air, we slowed for a moment, only to hear those footsteps draw closer. Panic surged again, and we bolted the remaining distance back to our dorm, adrenaline driving us past every familiar landmark that now seemed threatening. Once inside, we found our 3rd friend safe in his room. Peering out his window, we saw a shadow pacing near the wood's edge. Each time a car drove by, the figure would retreat into the trees, only to return once the headlights disappeared. Eventually, whoever it was vanished into the night, leaving us shaken and breathless, unsure if we had escaped or if they had simply grown bored. Back in the safety of our dorm room, the 3 of us eventually laughed again, trying to shake off the fear that had gripped us. But by the morning light, the reality of what had happened settled in. The isolation of that spot, the strange sounds circling us, the flying branches, they weren't a joke. That night in the nature preserve remains one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. From that point on, none of us ever ventured into those woods after dark again. It all happened during the very first week of freshman year at the University of Iowa. I was just starting to get comfortable with my new roommate, who was completely obsessed with rushing a fraternity. Rush week was set to begin the following week, but the parties were already starting on Thursday, and he insisted that he didn't want to go alone. He thought it would be harder to meet people by himself, so naturally, he wanted me to tag along. I agreed, even though I had zero interest in joining a fraternity myself. I was just there for the social scene, the parties, the whole college experience. Our plan was simple: hit one frat party on Thursday, then hop between different houses on Friday and Saturday. That Thursday, we ended up at what was probably one of the lowest ranked, almost underground houses on the whole campus. According to my roommate, it was a backup plan in case the bigger, more popular fraternities didn't accept him. The house was tucked far away from campus, in a rundown area that made it hard to imagine it was even a fraternity at all. We parked outside and immediately heard the pounding bass of music, the screech of car tires, and the raucous shouting of hundreds of students. It was chaos. The house itself looked like they had just picked the first building they could find, with peeling paint, broken steps, and dim, flickering lights. We knocked on the door and were greeted by a short, chubby guy in a stained white t-shirt, clutching a solo cup. He waved us in without a word of explanation. Inside, the living room was cramped and suffocating. Probably 50 guys crowded together, the heat almost unbearable, with barely 2 girls scattered among them. I spent 20 minutes trying to make conversation, talking to one awkward, sweaty stranger after another, each giving off a distinctly antisocial vibe. Eventually, I gestured to my roommate that it was time to leave, but a large group of guys blocking the doorway made it awkward to exit. We decided to wait a little longer, trying to avoid the embarrassment of leaving too early. I kept drinking the cheap, watered-down beer they were serving. After 5 cups, I barely felt a buzz. Then a heavy-set guy appeared, holding a tiny bottle, smirking as he handed it to me. "That'll get you wrecked," he said. I laughed nervously, expecting him to leave, but he didn't. He just stood there, staring, as if waiting for me to drink it. Reluctantly, I took it. It had maybe 2 shots of some strong liquor, and almost immediately, I started feeling dizzy. The room spun, the lights dimmed, and the music seemed to swell unnaturally around me. The next thing I knew, everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying in a dark bedroom, the muffled bass of music still filtering through closed doors. My heart raced as I tried to take in my surroundings. Faint outlines of furniture, a small closet door, nothing else visible in the gloom. Then I heard it, a soft crunching sound like a plastic bag being stepped on, coming from the closet. My panic skyrocketed. I bolted from the room, barreling down the stairs into the overcrowded living room. The chaos of the party seemed even more menacing now, and I grabbed my roommate, practically dragging him out the front door past a circle of guys standing nearby, oblivious to our sudden exit. Once in the car, I told my roommate what had happened. I had been drugged. He nearly called the police, but I insisted it would be pointless. The conversation turned awkward. He asked, hesitantly, "Were you taken advantage of?" I checked myself. Clothes still on, no pain, no signs of harm. Thankfully, whatever was in that drink must have been weak, or maybe it was a dud. A time check revealed I had only been unconscious for about 10 minutes. That night left a lasting mark on me. What should have been a typical first-week college experience had transformed into a night of terror, uncertainty, and helplessness. That underground, ghetto, frat party in Iowa remains one of the most frightening experiences of my life. A cautionary tale about trusting strangers, even in the most familiar environments. During my sophomore year, I had a single dorm room tucked away in the corner of the floor. It was a quiet, almost secluded little section. You had to turn a corner just to see the door. I liked it. It gave me the perfect balance, privacy to study and sleep, yet still close enough to hang out with friends or invite people over. A few weeks into the semester, I was deep into studying for a bio exam when I first noticed it, a soft, almost imperceptible tapping at my door. I paused, thinking it was just my imagination. Then it came again, light, deliberate. I called out, "Come in," but there was no answer. I got up, opened the door, and no one was there. I stepped around the corner to peek down the hallway, but it was completely empty. Someone was definitely messing with me, but who? I shrugged it off and returned to my desk, leaving the door open this time. Nothing happened. The next night, after shutting off my lamp to go to bed, the tapping returned, but louder this time. It had escalated to full-blown knocking. "Who's there?" I call, my voice trembling slightly. Silence. I leapt out of bed and swung the door open, scanning the corridor. Still no one. I ran to the corner to check the main hallway. Emptiness again. The next morning, I asked a few friends if they had been joking around. Every single one swore they hadn't. That night, after 3 hours of sleep, the knocking returned, louder than ever. My heart raced. I hesitated, debating whether to open the door. Summoning a burst of courage, I swung it wide. Again, nothing. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, the back of a figure disappearing around the far corner of the hallway. Adrenaline pumping, I sprinted after it. As I turned the next corner, I caught sight of a door slamming shut. It wasn't a dorm room, it was the bathroom. Determined to confront whoever this was, I threw the door open. The light was off. I flicked it on, bracing myself, and saw nothing. Instinct drove me to check the stalls. Both were closed. I got on my hands and knees to peek underneath. Heavy black boots. My stomach dropped. I held my breath and swung the door open, empty. No one. And then that sound, a low, unnerving giggle. Not childish, not feminine. It was the kind of laugh only an old, unhinged man could produce. Every ounce of courage evaporated. I bolted back to my room, slammed the door, and dove into bed, frantically texting friends who, of course, were all asleep. The knocking came one final time that night, 30 long, terrifying seconds before stopping. The next day, I asked around. No one else heard anything. No one had been pranking me. Everyone seemed genuinely sincere. I never found out who or what was behind those haunting knocks. But judging by the boots and that chilling laugh, I have no doubt it was an older man. And the thought of it still sends shivers down my spine. And that's just a glimpse into the strange, unsettling, and downright terrifying experiences that can happen when you least expect them. Whether it's a roommate you can't trust, shadows moving in the woods, a night that goes horribly wrong at a party, or mysterious knocks at your door. The things that seem small at first can turn into moments that haunt you forever. These stories remind us that the world isn't always as safe or as ordinary as it seems. So the next time you think you're alone, maybe you're not.